Hello, my name is Daniel and I welcome you to Fairytales That Believe in You. Today's tale, The Sparkshade of Silvermines. A very special tale, I hope you enjoy. If you hear any background noises or anything, I live in a fairly noisy house, so enjoy. The Sparkshade of Silvermines. Copyrights Julie Phelps, Lancashire, UK, 2022, all rights reserved. Email at ghblackcraig1066@gmail.com. ghblackcraig, ghblackcraig 1066@gmail.com. Part 1. A Shade Within a Spark. Deep underground, an elder elemental keeper is ceremoniously walking through tunnels of silver ore. His task to find a proper sliver of mineral for the upcoming ceremony is taking longer than expected. Milumia, the elven empress of the Silver Realms, had given him a big pouch of blessed silver dust, along with simple instructions to sprinkle it over a stone that shows a shade within a spark. Having found nothing in the mines, the elder made his way back to the entrance. Outside, a thunderstorm had recently passed, leaving the wet cliffs glowing under the bright warm rays of the sun. Continuing along the bottom of the cliff, he came upon a pile of boulders and birch trees blocking his way. The storm had caused a big part of the cliff top to crash down. As the elder observed the path of the crash, he saw midway up what Milumia had described. It was quite high and unusual in size. As he climbed up to clear the remaining stones encasing his find, the elemental elder saw it was no ordinary sliver of mineral. It was a huge oval polished black stone, its base encrusted with silver streaks resembling both roots and lightning bolts all around. 3 times his own height, the elder climbed to reach the narrow top. He began untying the string from the pouch of silver dust when the stone suddenly broke off the cliffside. The elder fell with the silver dust blinding him. Still his hands managed to embrace the polished surface of the black stone falling over him. Just before he hit the ground, the elder understood. There was no pain, only peace. The polished stone began to crack, but not into shards or rubble. Rather, it was the shell of a new life being born. The elder had understood and had offered his life to it as his last will. When his granddaughter arrived, a young fay with a pixie temper named Teratlazi, she saw a shadow dragon hatchling busy finishing his first meal. So busy, it still had shell residue covering its eyes while it sniffed around for more. Teratlazi then saw her elder's pickaxe. She realized the monster had eaten him along with the pouch of blessed silver dust. She drew her dagger and screamed as she fearlessly ran up to it. The scream made the young dragon turn quickly, clearing his eyes to see a raging fay bolting towards him. He began purring, taking Teratlazi for his mother. She fell to her knees, next to her elder's pickaxe. Her heart was now unable to harm the innocent hatchling, letting him gently press his snout against her as she wept. Elven Empress Milumia arrived with a group of various Fey nations from the Silverlands to receive the elemental elder's contribution for the sacred ceremony. But a deep growling is what they got, along with the menacing glares of a newborn shadow dragon, arching his wings up protecting Teratlazi. He was about to throw his dragon breath when Teratlazi stood up to stop him. Suddenly the growl was replaced by a fit of hiccups, leaving the young dragon harmless. Empress Melumia and the group joined Teratlazi to welcome the new member of their family, who was now elemental keeper of the Silverlands. Such are the sacred ways, where to kill a keeper of the lands is to take his place. They gathered in a loving circle around him, calming his hiccups. As one, they embraced the huge baby dragon. The Empress laid a gentle hand on his fuming nostrils and declared, "Your name shall be Elidan, keeper of the Silverlands, in service to those it carries, above and below." There, amongst the rubble of broken birch trees and granite, they performed the Silverland ceremony of changing shadow into light. Once done, they collected the pieces of eggshell and carried them to the round lake atop the cliff. Those were now the remains of the previous elemental keeper, and the Nagas of the lake performed his sacred water burial with amazing grace. The funeral ended when the lake was again calm, was again a mirror, making the reflection of the stars an epitaph for the watery grave. After that, the people exchanged parting wishes to each other, one at a time, when Elidan growled as he turned to the eastern night sky. Teratlazi peered in the same direction. When she saw it, she drew her bow and said with a clear tone, "Harpies, 7 leagues away. I see 17 of them." She glanced around. Everyone had scattered into position, yet the young dragon remained in the open, refusing to move, for he knew his duty. His dragon pupils turned to silver, his black scales and wings became spotted with silver sparks, and the growl from his stomach indicated he intended to use his shadow breath. Teratlazi worried he was still too young to throw his dragon breath, much less take down a single harpy with it. Yet the dragon turned to her and said, "It's the queen and her escort. I will draw them all to me. On my signal, you and the others shoot them all down. Her reign ends tonight." The incoming harpies could see the lake in the distance. The sight of the bright spot near it made them snicker in satisfaction. When harpies aren't busy screeching rumors and gossip, they seek out people to poop on. They also use lots of makeup to appear as ominous birds of prey, or to hide face with colored tones of evil charms. Truth is, squawking ugly seagulls is a better description of their natural appearance, which was revealed when out of nowhere a massive flash cut their path with blinding light. They all screeched in agony, then all went back to silence, to black of night under the stars. The next day, the people of Silverlands all dressed up with feathers and played at making smiley faces to each other, shouting compliments at random while waving sticks with a harpy finger tied at the end. Then a big rain came down. The feather costumes were given to the Nagas and water sprites to go play at washing away. Elidan went along with them, for he deeply enjoyed their flows and giggles, while Teratlazi kept a loving eye on him, wondering how his shadow dragon temper would one day manifest. The galleries of the Silvermines became the dragon's dwelling. He had already begun digging and enlarging the tunnels to fit his size, providing a new abundance of silver ore for the Silverlands people. At first, he would take refuge in the caves to spend his dragon temper, using his rage to dig where spirits of elementals guided, leading his diggings with rhythms and dances, his rage growing into a raging joy. He learned to do the same with many types of the Silverlands people, bringing his thundering fun and beaming joy, black scales glowing of ever brighter sparks. Sacred ways of spirit and soul led him to travel many realms, discovering beings of many ways, many shapes, in many ventures, and weaving many new friendships on his way. From a human skull asking to repent its sins, to mantis-headed ambassadors in purple cloaks, to benevolent galactic giant spiders, of all the people, of all those nations and more, Elidan had yet to encounter a dragon of his own kin. This is where the tale of the Sparkshade begins. Part 2. The Sparkshade. That evening Elidan felt like admiring the night sky earlier, so as the sun was still visible over the horizon, he proceeded towards the eastern plains at the edge of the forest, where the starry shine he enjoyed so much was already visible. He was nearing the end of the forest when he heard a scream of a little one, followed by a growling, menacing voice. Elidan darted silently towards the origin of the scream, preparing to unleash his dragon breath on whatever dared hurt a little one. Soon enough, he saw two large dragon silhouettes standing menacingly over a tiny glowing Silverlance friend. Elidan did not notice the third figure some distance behind them, for his black scalding breath was already engulfing the first two in a low growling hiss that sounded like "Grish," followed by a high-pitched "Tee," as blinding bright sparks projected in all directions out from Elidan's shadow cloud. A loud, distant scream of pain made Elidan aware of the third intruder fleeing in agony, unlike the previous two laying lifeless. Their mangled bodies made for a horrific sight, from which Elidan kept the little one from seeing by using his sparkly wings. He could hear the survivor's scream growing faint in the distance, as the Silverlands people arrived on the scene. Teratlazi was among the many who had seen the glow of his breath on the horizon, making a silver sunrise in the east, and had come running with weapons in hand. She looked at the remains of the two shadow dragons and said, "You came a long way from blinding harpies, beloved Elidan." He paused, gave a reassuring glance to the little one he just saved, sent him off, then said, "One of them got away. I acted too rashly. Now they will send more of them." "More of your kin," remarked Teratlazi, pointing at the dead shadow dragons with her bow. He said, "Little matter their flesh be as mine. Whoever preys on little ones is not of my kin, beloved." He nodded to her and to the others, saying, "See you all at the sunrise dance tomorrow." He flew off to the Silvermines, where he spent the rest of the night collecting each and every scale he had shed till this day. In the morning, he handed those scales out to the Silverlands people gathering at the sunrise dance and said, I offer you my old scales, for I think they may bring your steps, stomps, and sways to new scales on this new day." As the Silverlands phase stepped on with the morning rays, elsewhere, an angry Shadow Dragon King was stomping his tail. The report the king just received from his military about an agonizing soldier who returned babbling nonsense, repeating the word "Sparkshade, Sparkshade," was no coincidence. The silver sunrise that appeared in the west last night was an omen. The now dead soldier provided evidence that his rule over the Shadow Dragon kingdoms was gravely threatened. His queen beside him commented one word, "Amusing," and left the king to his angry stomping. Nothing irked him more than when she gave short comments. She was useless for his rule. The present circumstances required a careful investigation, yet time was short. The Shadow Dragon King gave his spies 3 days to find out about the Sparkshade. They soon found the other two Shadow Dragon soldiers' dead bodies at the border of their kingdom. 3 spies died trying to read their memories. Then, when reading the minds of those dead spies, only one word could be found in each of them: Sparkshade, Sparkshade, Sparkshade. So after 3 days, the king sent 9 soldiers on raiding parties. On the 7th day, still none had reported back. He decided to attack with 1,200 ground troops, adding aerial support with 33 of his elite division, with reports at every hour. Yet there was no report at the 3rd hour or on the 4th. "Curious," commented the Queen with irony, which again only aggravated the King's mood. He sent 9 scouts to witness the state of the battlefield. Only at the 11th hour did one of them report back. "The field showed no trace of any soldier, my King. Only one mark of their presence was found, a soldier's shield facing the ground, with a sword pinned down to the hilt in the center, no blood, and filled with the water of a recent storm." The scout continued, "I did not see the Sparkshade, but I saw what it does. It makes sparks out of shade and makes light of our shadow." The Queen replied, "Inconceivable." The Queen growled, fuming of discontent. Then the Queen added, "Perhaps conceivable using proper diplomacy to strike an unstrikable enemy?" Meanwhile in the Silverlands, Elidan was resting deep in the Silvermines when he got a strange sensation of being called. It was not a call he could hear, more of a feeling through his soul, unlike anything he ever experienced before. Emerging out of the mine, he felt drawn to the east. He then heard Teratlazi call him. "Beloved, before you go there you'll need to prepare. We received a royal diplomatic envoy from the Shadow Dragon Kingdom." She handed him a parchment made of a thin gold sheet. Elidan read it halfway and asked, "The presence of the Sparkshade is requested at our border." "The Sparkshade? Who is that?" Teratlazi giggled. "That's what they call you. Now please finish reading it, beloved." Once done, he replied, "This is a trap. Their promise of diplomatic immunity or wanting to honor a warrior is not fooling me, yet it is my duty to go." As he handed back the document, Empress Melumia arrived with a silver parchment in hand and asked, "Dear Elidan, you've read the royal address, now what do we respond?" They request a response by sunset, and for the Sparkshade to show up with a diplomatic delegation at sunrise. He reflected for a moment and realized tomorrow night was the time of a great Silverland ceremony. He growled, "It's a trick. They seek to disrupt our sacred rites. I cannot be absent from here tomorrow, dear Empress. My duty is," she interrupted. "Your duty is to be ambassador for your people tomorrow." She held up the silver parchment and asked again, "What is our response?" Elidan reflected a moment, wrote his reply and gave it back to Empress Melumia, who then read it aloud. "Your Highness of Shadow Dragons, King and Queen, by my glint, my shine, my flint and my spine, you shall receive the presence of I, the Sparkshade of Silvermines." So at sunset a response from the Silverlands arrived from the Shadow Dragon for the Shadow Dragon King. He was very pleased how his queen's suggestion gave him the opportunity to have the Sparkshade at his mercy. Yet the king had no intention of facing the Sparkshade himself. He arranged for his 3 sons, last of his bloodline, to be the ones escorting the Silverlands diplomats. The elder of the 3 brothers was named Shu, the second Eshu, and the third Ayeshu. Each were ranking commanders of the Shadow Dragon armies. The king promised to transfer his power to the one who would strike down the Sparkshade, and gave only one order. The royal bloodline is not to be harmed and must prevail. The brothers agreed the elder would have the honor to strike down the Sparkshade, then went to prepare the troops in time for sunrise. Dawn was slowly approaching in the Silverlands. Elidan was wearing the diplomatic headdress of his people, all ready to go, growling impatiently. "You can go ahead if you want," said Teratlazi. "The delegation and I will be with you at sunrise, beloved." He nodded in agreement and flew eastwards, arriving quickly at the border where a large army of shadow dragons was posted on each side of the entry road. As he landed, 3 large soldiers stepped forward in the middle of the path. Elidan stood in silence, observing them while they did the same, until Teratlazi arrived next to him, as the first rays of the sun appeared over the horizon. "Greetings, O mighty shadow dragons! I am Teratlazi o Silverlands. I present you with the warrior known as the Sparkshade, and here with me is the delegation from all the people and nations who have witnessed his deed." Elidan's heart trembled when he looked behind to see people from every nation and realm he had encountered through his life, standing in rows of 5 in a file that stretched beyond the horizon. At the front stood the Silverlands people, wearing armor, shields and blades fashioned from the scales Elidan had given them, followed by pixies, fauns, elves, silver dragons, gnomes, nagas, giant spiders from every arachnid nation, mantids, elementals, centaurs, and way too many to describe all who had joined the delegation. Teratlazi continued. They also carried demands of reparation and reconciliation for the wrongs your people have caused them. "I am Commander Shu," responded the largest of the 3 soldiers. "Here are Commanders Eshu and Ayeshu. We will be escorting your delegation to the throne of our father, the great Shadow Dragon King." Shu signaled with his sword. Then the 3 brothers turned and began walking. Elidan stepped forward with Teratlazi on his left, followed by the rest of the delegation. On his very first step onto the Shadow Dragon Kingdom, he felt something was very wrong with this land. A rage was seeping out like shards under his feet, yet it did not affect the others following him. So he continued forward as the anger and pain of the land crept onto his soul at every step. But something else was happening to him. Elidan was slowly growing in size, shedding scales as he endured the sickness of the land, each step heavier and heavier as he stumbled on his knees from the weight of it all. Commander Shu had been waiting for this moment. He swiftly turned to strike the Sparkshade with his sword, but a lightning bolt struck the commander down before he could reach his target, leaving his body lifeless on the ground. Before Eshu or Ayeshu could turn around, a giant spider suddenly appeared over the dead commander's body and just as quickly disappeared with it. Teratlazi casually pulled a little silver bell from her pouch, rang it once as she put her right hand on Elidan, then softly sang to him. "If I cannot bring you comfort, then at least I'll bring you home. For nothing is more precious than the love we have, and so we all must learn from our misfortunes, honor blessings that are real. Let the bells ring out to solstice at the closing of the year." Elidan's black scales began shining of silver sparks. Pupils turned to bright silver as he stood up and threw his mighty breath up to the sky in a loud "Krishti!" with such force that the land shook and pushed the Shadow Dragon army a step backward from their position as they covered their eyes from the blinding shine of the sparks in the air. Teratlazi turned to face the delegation, raised her bow above her head, and proclaimed, "A brave warrior has fallen doing his duty for his people. Commander Shu, we honor your name." Together with her they all spoke his name 3 times. "Shu, Shu, Shu." She then stored away the bell and climbed onto Elidan's back, now grown more than enough to carry her short fairy body, and signaled to resume the march forward. Again, with each step, Elidan felt the distorted rage of the land creep onto him while his body continued to grow in size, shedding scales on the way. Once more, he crumbled on his knees from the dark oppression. Commander Eshu swiftly pivoted to strike the Sparkshade, but 3 silver arrows flew from Teratlazi's bow straight into his skull before he could swing, dropping the commander's body to the ground, lifeless. The same giant spider appeared over his corpse, disappearing with it in the blink of an eye just as it did before, while Commander Ayeshu remained in position. Teratlazi stepped down from Elidan's back and took the silver bell from her pouch, as did the Silverlands people behind her. Together they rang it once, and they sang. Now all the silver bells are ringing, hear them echo through your soul, hear the fairies' voices singing, with our hearts as one and whole. Elidan's black scales started to shine of even brighter sparks, as he stood up, spitting out an even bigger breath into the sky in a thundering Krishti, forcing the soldiers to take 2 steps backwards as the ground trembled and massive sparks nearly blinded them. Teratlazi then climbed back on and called for the delegation to honor the second commander. A brave warrior has fallen doing his duty for his people. Commander Shu, we honor your name. And they repeated with her, Eshu, Eshu, Eshu. Commander Ayeshu restarted the march, knowing he needed to succeed in killing the Sparkshade before reaching the king's castle, which was now in view. Elidan was determined to withstand the creeping malevolence that assailed him at every step, while still growing, shedding scales as he focused on reaching the castle at any cost. He managed to endure the pain longer this time, enough to reach the entrance to the outer yard of the castle, where the king's elite guards stood along either side all the way to the main entrance. Yet Elidan's strength failed as he laid a foot past the gate, crumbling onto his stomach. Teratlazi stumbled and knocked off the diplomatic headdress as she flipped to the ground, leaving her in no position to counter Commander Ayeshu. His strike was easy, an elevated position allowing the blade to fly quick as he glanced, watching it plant itself just off the left of Elidan's head. Recognizing the royal markings of the late great queen, he had pivoted his strike away. The royal bloodline is not to be harmed and must prevail, said Ayeshu as he retracted his blade and bowed with respect. He continued, Allow me to help carry you to our father. You bear the frown marks of my late godmother, the great Queen Dantelia Maseri Sanguis. My mother, the queen, is the 6th of her sisters. All this time Teratlazi had remained in the position she fell, which is on her back, butt upwards, with Elidan's headdress covering its crack. She had listened, and now was speaking up. Show us, by your honor, a deed that holds this claim true. Ayeshu raised his sword, signaling the 3 armies to stand at royal salute. Slowly he kneeled, laid his sword before her tiny hands, and stood back up silent. She grabbed the enormous sword and flew upwards, still in her backwards position, head between her thighs, waving him to go support Elidan. You may help him, she said, as she glared sternly, keeping the blade pointed at him, while he raised Elidan up and offered his right shoulder to lean on. A warrior stands in his duty to his people, proclaimed Teratlazi to the delegation. Ayeshu, we honor your name, and spoke his name 3 times, accompanied by the delegation. Ayeshu, Ayeshu, Ayeshu. A new witness to carry testimony of the Sparkshade's deed, added Teratlazi, as she flipped herself upright, fitting the diplomatic address over the handle and guard of the sword, then gave it back to the commander. She then took out her silver bell and rang it with all the others as she sang. This is the time we stand together, for the truth was always here, within love for all the people, at the closing of the year. Elidan's black scales sparkled, eyes became all of silver glow. Now grown to Ayeshu's massive size, he stood on his own and nodded for him to pursue forward. Ayeshu replied, Brother, I wait for your breath of Christi. As he spoke, a bright spark flew from his tongue and hit his blade. A lightning bolt of agony flashed through him and along every soldier. A lightning bolt of agony flashed through him and along every soldier under his command. Yet the pain dissolved just as quickly, while a thick black vapor fell off their bodies, vanishing into the ground. Before Ayeshu even asked, Teratlazi spoke up. "Full diplomatic immunity for you and all those under your command. Now please, Commander, lead us to your king and queen." The march resumed, now up the grand stairway as Elidan grew more, shedding scales all the way, and upon arriving before the king and queen, his size stood as great as the Shadow Dragon King himself. Ayeshu spoke. "Mother, Father, it is my honor to present you with the one we call the Sparkshade, here with the diplomatic delegation of those who carry witness to his deed, along demands of reparations for the ills we shadow dragons caused them." Teratlazi stepped forward as she extracted a large silver ornament from her tiny handbag and spoke. "I am Teratlazi o Silverlands. First, we express our gratitude to our royal hosts. For Her Majesty the Queen, we offer this tail ornament crafted with our finest silver. May it be as striking as your Majesty." The Queen gracefully extended her tail, fitting in the fang-shaped jewel on and out of Teratlazi's hands. "Exquisite," appreciated the Queen as she coiled her tail, admiring it closer. Teratlazi then said, For His Majesty the King, we offer the reassurance that his 2 sons who fell are alive and well. We honored their names and have given them armor crafted of scales shed by the Sparkshade himself." As she spoke, the 2 commanders appeared behind her, both clad in full body armor, standing still in silence. She then added, "They will return to their people once our diplomatic proceedings are concluded." The king gave a nod to his queen, letting her do all the talking and diplomacy before unleashing his power. "We requested the presence of the Sparkshade, yet you bring us one of our own kin, the breathing royal bloodline of my elder sister, great Queen Dantelia Maceri Sanguis. Please tell me what you know of his origins." Teratlazi explained that she was the first witness of his hatching, and told of the circumstances that made him an elemental keeper of Silverlands. The Queen was impressed. You say one of your elders' life and flesh was offered, so one of our kin could live. By our gratitude and by our honor, today we repay." The tail of the Queen had struck through the king's eyes before her sentence was done, and laid the lifeless head before Teratlazi. "Thank you, Your Highness," she said. "You have our profound gratitude, and we offer our deepest regret for the loss of your king." She then stepped to the side, allowing Ayeshu to pay respects to his father, joined by his brothers on each side of him. The queen took the king's crown with her hand, while her tail elegantly and gently removed the silver fang ornament from his skull, as she said, "Be at rest, mighty king. Your sons have gathered to honor your duty." A loud rumbling shook the floor under the king's corpse. The queen flung her tail and stabbed the silver fang ornament through the king's tail and spoke, "Christi." A spark flew from her tongue, and when it hit the silver tail fang, a monstrous, black, wispy, gooey shape of the Dragon King rose from his dead body and threw itself onto Commander Shu. Glowing silver sparks appeared all over his armor made of the Sparkshade scales, causing the monstrosity to shriek and contort while it still attempted to push itself through the commander's helmet visor. It was about to breach in, yet the commander spoke, "Christi." The sparks of his armor grew into a silver column of light around him, blocking the abominations completely, which made it leap towards Commander Eshu. He too spoke the Sparkshade's word, "Christi." As his armor lit up into a column of light, Teratlazi flew onto Elidan's head and loudly cheered on. "All together now!" Commander Eshu signaled the three armies with his sword, then swung his blade as he shouted, "Christi!" Along with his brothers on each side, the three armies, the Sparkshade behind, and the entire diplomatic delegation chanting it. A blinding silver light flashed and revealed for a brief moment a gigantic silver dragon, of which the three armies formed the body and wings, the endless diplomatic delegation the tail, head and eyes from Elidan deploying his wings, Ayeshu the tongue with his sword, and his two brothers the fangs. All that shine projected into a deluge of gold and silver sparks that reduced the shadowy entity to a mere speck of ink, shivering and clinging desperately to the corpse of the king. The queen addressed it directly. "You may continue to exist in this new form," she said as she presented a tiny white spark glimmering in her hand. "Be the shadow to this, or again witness the deed of the Sparkshade." The trembling shadow wisp flew to the queen's hand right away. She then said, "From now on, you exist as the shade within this spark. Now and forever with it, be gone." And it blinked out of existence in silence at the hand of the queen's diplomacy, striking an unstrikable enemy. She then turned to Elidan. "Sparkshade of Silvermines, it is my privilege to welcome you to your father's funeral." Teratlazi flew down, bowed to the queen, and said, "We will prepare the body for the ceremony." As giant arachnids appeared and disappeared with her along with the corpse of the king. The queen continued, "I am your godmother. Long ago your mother saw a terrible affliction take over the king, so secretly she traded your egg with mine and sent me to the Silverlands to find a spell to fight back. There your egg was hidden deep in a cliffside near a silver mine. I was given the spell, but on my return the great queen had just died, having fought the king as a distraction to cover my absence. However, my bond to my people is one of deep ritual and ceremony. I could not use the spell outside of those boundaries. That is, until I was able to summon you, my godson, to stand here today and properly fulfill the sacred rite." Elidan bowed to the queen, profoundly humbled by all she had revealed of his origins, and ashamed of holding a hatred for his kin for so long. "It is a privilege to serve," he responded, not knowing what else to say. "Spoken like a true king, my brother," appreciated Ayeshu. "And you acting like one," responded Elidan. "Turn and see the many people whom your blade led to victory." Ayeshu was crowned king. Then the Fays brought back the corpse of the dead king laid on a funeral carriage. From there the new king was presented with every delegation member. He received their testimony of the Sparkshade's deed, their demands for reparation. The delegation members gave their sacred blessings to His Majesty and offered their profound respects to his father's remains. Once everyone was done, Teratlazi spoke. "Majesty, your father will be given a tomb that reflects his duty and true deeds. We will honor his memory by laying his bones to rest in the bed of our sacred pond, river, and lake. We will honor his might by crafting his scales into weapons and laying them to rest in any standing enemy. We honor his devotion and offer his flesh for his people to eat, so all can have a taste of what he endured and carry his living spirit in their duty." The queen nodded. "You honor us by practicing our sacred ways with amazing grace, making a ceremony that brings healing from the false shadow that infected our people. It corrupted our courage and honor into arrogant pride, explorers became invaders, abandoning growth and evolution for stale genetic manipulation, as wise guardians became raging tyrants. Our true shadow is the one in service to the shine of the stars, to the souls who travel their light and carry their virtues. The canvas of deepest darkness supporting the brightest of lights. The queen then turned to Elidan. Beloved godson, I give you the fang your mother broke off the king, and that I've kept hidden since the day she died. She detached the pointy end from her silver tail ornament and handed it to him. It was discreetly hidden in the diplomatic document requesting your presence, and made into a vanity of silver, so that the king's legacy could prevail, with his own fang biting his own tail. Elidan fitted it back to its original place, giving the fallen king a shiny upper left fang. His flesh was then blessed with sacred silver dust, so the ceremony given to the son upon his birth was given to the father upon his death. The enchantment on his flesh allowed each shadow dragon to make their own share become 3 by speaking the word Christi. All of it distributed by the queen herself while escorting the remains of her king to its Silverlands grave. She said, "One share we eat, as one share we bury with bones. The remaining we bring home so our families can also carry in their hearts, souls, and hands the legacy of both a fallen father's duty and living deed of his son." Once the burial completed, they laid a modest headstone bearing the epitaph, "Here rest the bones of King Shadow Silverfang, beloved father of Elidan." Afterwards Elidan brought his brothers and godmother down to the cliffside where he was born so many years before. The hole from which his egg had been dug out was still visible midway up, now with a gentle stream of water flowing into it and down to a shallow pond where little ones played. Up top the cliff, a bunch of water sprites got joyfully agitated when they saw Elidan, screaming and chanting, "He's grown! It will fit! It will fit! It will fit!" While plucking out a silver crown from the pit where his egg once rested, washing it as they carried it onto Elidan's head. The queen smiled. "Before we hid your egg, I asked the Fays to make you a crown fitting your bloodline, for you to become a bridge for your people and a king among the Fae, where royalty is in those who serve in majesty." King Ayeshu announced, "Let it be my first royal decree. Be told this day of shadow dragons becoming family and clan with all the people of Silverlands, by grace of our brother the Sparkshade, King of Silver Bridges." Part 3. 50 Sparks of Shade. The shadow dragons spent the following months healing their land and people, looking for ways to correct past wrongs and provide reparation to many different nations. King Ayeshu wrote a letter to his Silverlands brother telling of the progressing preparations, of how some amount of silver would be required, of the need to cleanse the greed of the gold they had hoarded, and a list of military operations that he was considering, requesting his advice and contribution to a possible war. The reply was a wedding card announcing the King of Silver Bridges to be marrying the Queen of Sproutlings. Its guest list included people from all the nations who demanded reparations, and silver payment was offered for shadow dragons to provide catering, transport, housing, staff, logistics, and special personnel for the ceremony and following celebrations. This slightly puzzled Ayeshu at first. Yet he realized reading on about the locations, dress rehearsal schedules, and recommended providers that his Silverlands brother was giving him tools, components to transmute a war into a sacred divine healing. The Queen gladly volunteered as General Wedding Coordinator and was given half the great army to begin preparations. In the Silverlands, Elidan would marry Teratlazi at the sacred lake, next to the riverbank that had been lined with gold. Once their vows were told and union made, the Shadow Dragons made a great silver bridge to transport the guest to the wedding ball, in lands where long ago ruled the ancestors of Elidan's lineage, the dragons of Masseri. "All is in place for the special celebrations," said Ayeshu to Elidan as they walked across the bridge, and added with a smile, "My soldiers greatly benefited from those wedding dance rehearsals too." Elidan responded, "We dance as we fight and fight as we dance. In both we deploy our raging joy." The Queen presented the newlyweds with the ballroom theme and main arrangements. All will be under the direction of Major Sparks, with Captain Marvel on the floor and Private Trix as bait, while we support you from the shadows. Now we make of battlefields our dance floor, and I invite you to step into the Sparks of Masseri Arise ball. Teratlazi and Elidan opened the first dance with grace and majesty. Together they sparkled on to the melody as a male voice sang.
The day we met, it's true, I heeded you so. Now every chance I get, I send you all of my glow. Please say you'll sway on with me, I'll make you so proud of you. We'll burn down all the boneheads everywhere we go. Be my lady, be my fairy lady,
My fair and fairy
fire
lady,
fairy Sparky,
my fairy fire lady.
an arson tonight.
A female voice continued.
I'll be your fairy lady, just spark and see. For every glint you send me, I'll spark you 3. Oh, since the day I saw you, my heart's been beating for you. I'll sway and glow on with you all eternity.
The wedding guests joined in and quickly filled the dance floor. Each nation took center floor in turns, performing their unique steps, many with dance troupes, some as couples or in solo, and Shadow Dragons presented new words of spark. Along the breath of Christi, they had joined Osti and Kalis, lighting up the dance floor in ways never seen before. It was a glorious celebration that echoed through countless realms and kingdoms. The Shadow Dragons ended the Sparks of Masseri Arise ball by distributing long floating strands of gold as they glided around and sang. This gold chime from us, this gold grace of us, hold on this string that weaves our dreams to manifest in us. Who wants to spark forever? Who wants to spark forever? True. The newlyweds then announced an after-ball would soon be made under the theme of their honeymoon, 50 Sparks of Shade. After saying farewell to those returning home, they went on to celebrate in a land of many rivers, where the people are like flowers. The Dragon Queen handed a postcard to the couple as they were heading to their wedding night and said, "Your honeymoon planning and destinations are on the blank side. You have carte blanche. On the other side indicates the time you have, 21 eons with option of eternity. She nodded to her godson. Go on, lad, be prompt and be true. And to Teratlazi, go on, lass, go on your grace and majesty. Such is the tale of shadow dragons joining with the people of all kinds, by the deed of the Sparkshade of Silvermines. The end. The Sparkshade of Silvermines. Contact Miss Julie Phelps. She began to make printable copies so you can make your own tale and print it yourself and cut the middleman. Books are so expensive, so you're quite welcome to email her and contribute to the loving magic. Till the next tale.